Hello, and welcome to Reality Remix, the podcast, episode 5. I'm your host, Dale Jensen, and an item that you might have missed a week ago is President Biden's economic agenda is at risk as moderate and progressive Democrats fight over what's in the plan. Maybe it's time for two parties on the left. The big tent concept isn't really working out so well, given the huge distance between progressive and conservative Democrats. Let's focus on Reality Remix. With me in the studio today is Dennis.
Hi, Dale. Yeah, I'm not the least bit surprised that Biden isn't able just to swish his 3.2 trillion economic plan through Congress, and I expected to see the infighting because that's their nature.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be, and well, we'll see where they go with it. Also with me is Solomon.
Good evening. How are you doing tonight?
Doing very well, thank you. Episode 5, the privatization of space travel. After almost 50 years of seemingly little progress in manned space exploration, we have recently hit a wave of action. I live a little ways north of Cape Canaveral, and a couple of times a month, I can go out on my front lawn and watch a spacecraft heading off into the darkness of space. While some of these rockets are being flown at the behest of NASA, in reality, most of them do not belong to the government. Instead, they are private ventures. In the case of Florida, mostly Elon Musk's SpaceX. And it appears as though this will be the future of space travel, conducted by private companies rather than by the government. Solomon, what's going on?
Billionaires in space. Yeah, there's a lot of private companies that are in the mix with NASA and other space agencies nowadays. There's a reason for that. The NASA is a government-funded program. The ESA is also a government-funded program, but there's multiple countries involved. You're working on limited budgets with things. The private spacecraft industry, like SpaceX, for example, they're able to do what they need to do as a business without a whole lot of overhead rules. Part of that is development is able to speed up and you're able to save a lot of money. Now, people are wondering, what's NASA doing? They have they're the ones launching the satellites, but they're using SpaceX rockets for that. Well, there's a reason, and then it's the cost. Like for example, the Crew Dragon that they'll fly soon to fly the Crew 3 mission. And currently, there's only two spacecraft that can fly to the International Space Station. There's the Soyuz capsules, and then there's the Dragon capsules. The Dragon capsules are about $23 million a seat, whereas the Soyuz are about $76 million a seat. So who do you go with right there? Dragon's a third of the cost. Why not? Uh, it's going to lead to more and more companies being able to provide services for more and more other companies that need rockets to get whatever products they're getting up either into orbit for, say, satellite industry or for moon or further space exploration.
Well, the most prominent point I can see is that SpaceX is designing their modules, their capsules, whatever, to be reusable. Doesn't the SpaceX launch up and then land on a drone in the ocean?
Falcon 9 rocket is a first stage booster that is reusable. So it launches the second stage, which would include your Dragon capsule if you're carrying crew or cargo or whatever satellite. But the booster, the first part that launches off the ground, that actually flies back and lands. And then you're able to refurbish it, refuel it, and then refly it. And they've been reflying these, up to 10 times per booster. And a new project that they're working on is called Starship. Starship is intended to be a ways to get to Mars. However, there's more to it than that. It will be the very first fully reusable rocket. So the first stage and the second stage will both be able to go to orbit and then return all on their own and refuel, and then off they go again within hours. So eventually the cost will be to the point that space travel will be as regular as, say, like, like airplane travel is currently.
Right. There was a flight, I think about a month ago, that had four non-astronauts were on board. None of them
Yeah,
were trained as astronauts. It was fly
yeah,
by wire basically.
yeah. That was the Inspiration 4 mission. All those people were put together, handpicked, and it was all to raise money for St. Jude's. And yeah, you're right. The spacecraft itself is autonomous fully. From the moment they took off the ground until they landed, the thing's flying by itself mostly. Like, yeah, you need to be sort of somebody to man the controls, so to speak. But as far as operations go, the thing flies itself.
Which I mean that's something that Elon Musk is known for. The Teslas that drive themselves.
Absolutely.
Um, it's interesting the differences in the rockets because when the Falcon when the smaller one takes off about a couple minutes after we see it up in the sky, we can hear the engine
Yeah,
roar.
the burn
But
back.
the heavy one, the big one that I think they've launched two times, um, that thing actually rattles the windows of my house
I
when
believe it.
the
It's 3 times the size of the smaller one.
yeah, when the sound wave hits the house, it rattles the windows. And what interests me about this is it's the privatization of space travel. It's also the commoditization of space travel. Clearly, you need to have an awful lot of money to be able to go into space. William Shatner went into space. Um, I don't remember if he
William
paid for
Shatner
it.
didn't buy his ticket.
Yeah. But that I think is where it's going, and the more and more they do this, the more and more rockets that there are. I don't think that they will likely get to the point where it's economically feasible to justify, at least in my lifetime. But my kid's lifetime, maybe she'll take a vacation to the moon or something.
Well, the point I
Well, there's
wanted.
an.
Go ahead, Solomon.
I was just going to say, I had one more thing to that. The Starship program. One of the other ways that you could use a Starship would be point-to-point travel on the Earth, and that would allow you to travel anywhere in the world in less than an hour.
Hmm.
And if you could fly 100 people on a flight on one of those, they're huge ships.
Hmm.
Okay,
So
well,
if they can get the price down, they'd be able to, not just travel people around, but be able to travel cargo anywhere in the world in an hour or less.
the point I wanted to throw in real quick was that are they making these rockets to lift heavy payloads to the space station, or are they going to build like an orbital station to build actual ships that can get to Mars, or are they planning on taking the Starship model directly to Mars? I mean, how are they planning it all out? What's the logistics they're dealing with?
Planning on several stations down the road. One of the first ones would be a local station at the moon for part of the Artemis mission that NASA is trying to get together. And it'd be useful for later on ventures going to the moon, but they could use that as say, a way station towards building another one similar that you would have at Mars. So you could have a kind of like a rendezvous, kind of like think of it like a vacation shack that's you just stop by every once in a while and get your refueling done, and
Yeah, but is the
off you go.
Is the Starship version of SpaceX that they have, is that capable of making it all the way to Mars with the amount of fuel it has?
It would have to get refueled in orbit around Earth, but after refuel, yeah, it should be able to make it there.
Okay, and we're talking a one-way or a two-way mission?
Currently it'd be a one-way mission, but uh, he has designed the engines with the intention of being able to make his own fuel once he's
Once he's
on
landed on
Mars.
Mars. Yeah, yeah, I've read about
Yeah,
that
and you
too.
got to remember too, the first few missions that would be going there will be completely autonomous. I doubt that there would be human missions going, probably for maybe not for the first, say, 100 ships that would show up.
Okay. So they're going to take a bunch of supplies there, drop them off, and have them waiting.
Correct.
Just like in the movie The Martian.
Yeah.
Right. Back in the 40s and 50s, there was a science fiction author named Robert Heinlein, who one of my favorite authors, and he wrote a book called The Man Who Sold the Moon, which was about a flamboyant character named D.D. Harriman, who wanted to go to the moon, and and the book was basically how he was the person behind the landing on the moon in this particular scenario, and the different schemes that he had to raise money and such. He did things like selling tracks on the moon, which is where the title came from. And I think I think it's interesting to look at some of these perspectives back in the 40s and 50s, prior to Sputnik and the space race, which it was envisioned, I think, that the space would be a commercial space, that it would be, rockets would be made by Boeing and sold to TWA, and TWA would, send the guy in 2001 to the space station and the Hilton up there, and then on to the moon. And then Sputnik happened, and the government just kind of stepped in and said, this is not a commercial venture. This is a national security thing, and that's where we went with the Gemini, Mercury, Apollo thing. It was just a response to a perceived threat, and then they just kind of after post Apollo, they did some space shuttle stuff. They did some unmanned missions that we've learned a great deal about the solar system. And now we're kind of gone full circle back to, if we truly wanted to get off this planet, we can't wait for the government to do it because the government has little to no interest in doing so. So let's find a profit motive and let's make that happen. So where do you think the profit is in settling Mars? There's obviously an altruistic reason to do so, to preserve the species in case we do something wrong on this planet. But where's the profit in that?
Initially, the profit could only be as property, I would assume, at first. Uh, it would be so hard to get anything from Mars back home that the cost to travel any kind of weight back would be kind of crazy expensive. But if you're building communities and cities and planning on starting maybe a future of humanity, then I would think property alone and would be the most expensive thing there.
Well,
Well, and
who
that
exactly
begs the
owns the
question.
moon?
Right. That begs the question: who owns the moon? Who owns Mars? If it's been a long time since I did any reading on United Nations treaties, but I believe that this is covered. The moon, at least, is covered by a United Nations treaty, which says nobody owns the moon. That
But yeah, I
even though
thought it
they're
was treated similar to like international waters, where it was just kind of nobody owns it sort of a thing.
right, but looking at that from the standpoint of the privatization of space, is that something that can happen? I mean, it's in Elon Musk's best interest to land on the moon, plat out, building lots and start selling property. Which, can he do that? Can he not do that? It's just it's a whole new area, and I don't think that Mars could be treated in the same fashion that the moon is. Why would the United States, or I'm sorry, why would the United Nations on Earth have any sovereignty to say what's going on Mars? I would have to think that the first person who gets to Mars can claim it for themselves, for their country, just like the Spanish claimed, parts of the New World when they got there. They just got there, put down their flag, and said, "This is ours." And there was nobody with the authority to tell them no, because, well, the Pope sort of did at some point. But I think that that's a crucial point. Is what's the commercial angle? How are people going to make money out of this? Because Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk may be doing it to, in a competition with each other. They may be doing it because they think that they're going to save the planet. I don't know what their motivation is, but at the end of the day, they're in it to make money. And apart from selling tickets, I don't see how they're going to make money by going to Mars.
Well, curious to note that with all their rabble-rousing about climate change, you would think that they would be pressuring Congress to, give more budget to NASA, or maybe grants, whatnot, to the different private companies that are building rockets, to maybe have a second place to go if the whole climate change is so horribly wrong and we only have 11 years left. You know what I'm saying? You would think that there would be this mad rush to develop technology to get us out in space, and then we could say, okay, yeah, look what happened there. I mean, thousands of science fiction movies been made on that premise,
Right. Yeah, and the and the other side of that is that people don't want to leave the planet. They want the climate change people. They don't want to leave the planet. They want to change your style of life in order to stay on the planet that they're on. These rockets contribute probably quite a bit to the carbon footprint of. So they're just naturally going to be opposed to something like that.
Even more so than cows do, huh?
Possibly so.
On the rocket engine, but maybe possibly so.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to Reality Remix, the podcast. Thank you again for hitting that thumbs up button, as well as for subscribing to the channel if you like what you hear.